Patrick Willis explains the real reason he retired. Patrick Willis, man, what a superstar, what a stud this guy was at linebacker. So, fun fact, back in the day, 2005, Facebook just popped off. I had just got a Facebook, and I was friends somehow on Facebook with Patrick Willis. Like back then, there wasn't celebrity profiles or anything. He was still at Ole Miss, and I remember his profile picture. I remember his profile. We weren't friends. I'm not sure how in real life, but we were Facebook friends. But Patrick Willis was dominant at Ole Miss. Remember for playing with a club on his hand. Then he goes to the Niners, just as dominant. He was a guy every year on Madden. You could just pencil him in to be 99 overall. Every single year, he was a 99 overall middle linebacker. And then just as quickly as he arrived, just as quickly as he dominated, he was gone. He retired from the NFL, a short career. At the time, I had heard he was like an angel investor. He was getting pretty involved in Silicon Valley, and I guess he had some pretty serious business acumen. But that's what I heard at the time of why he retired. So now we're here with RG3 on his podcast, and we're going to hear from Patrick Willis why he retired.
To be the newest inductee into the Hall of Fame and be a part of the 2024 class.
Yeah, first, it's a tremendous honor. It still feels unreal. But at the same time, each day that has passed now, it's starting to sink in a little bit more. Now you're starting to, having to do the list to get things ready for it. And you're like, man, it's really happening.
I mean, now that I think about it, I really have no idea how long he actually played. But if you asked me, I would say somewhere around 8-9 years. And the fact that a linebacker can have a Hall of Fame career in 8-9 years is really unbelievable. I mean, it shows you just how dominant he was. Like I said, he was 99 overall from the day he stepped foot on the NFL field.
So it's a lot going on at the moment, but a great moment.
Yeah, and what you've experienced in your NFL career and really in life, a lot of people will never get that experience. So when you got that knock on the door from Bryant Young, just describe that feeling of I guess finally getting into the Hall of Fame after waiting 5 years as being eligible to get in. What was that feeling like?
Yeah, it was a great feeling. It was a feeling that was, it was more of, it's on time. It's time. And, I had said before that, whenever it happens that, I would be appreciative and beyond grateful. And I didn't know when it would happen, or if it would, but to see that it happened, it's beyond words. I don't even have the words to put it into place.
Now, P. Willie, we do our research on this show. So I've seen other people ask you these types of questions. And you mentioned that part of this process was, your nieces asking you to put together a basketball goal for them. And I heard that you hadn't put it together quite yet because you got interrupted by that.
RG3, I need to get to the nuts and bolts here of why he retired. Okay, we're doing a lot of kind of glaze. I don't want to say glazing. I don't, the youth throw that term around. I'm not going to say that, but let's get to the meat and potatoes here.
Nah, have you finished putting together that basketball hoop yet?
Oh man, you had done your research. No, I haven't put it together. I haven't finished putting it together yet, but I most definitely will do that. And that was a tremendous day. Just the fact that I was putting that together for them, and I remember when I was around that age.
It does have to be a crazy feeling, like to be a pro and to get the knock or whatever, that you're a Hall of Famer. Like, especially for, you think about pro athletes, like how long they play a sport. They play obviously growing up and then high school, then college and the pros and the whole journey. And then just be kind of acknowledged at the end, like you were a Hall of Famer. You're one of the greatest to ever play this sport. That's got to be the ultimate sign of closure. It's got to be the ultimate sign of like, okay, I went on that journey. I had my reasons. I had my goals. I achieved them. And then I get acknowledged for the encapsulation of the entire career. So it's got to be a wild feeling.
Age of putting up, me and my dad putting up our first basketball goal, and to be doing that for them and to get the knock, it was just a complete moment.
When I look at your career, I had the honor of playing against you. And anytime we lined up, I think we played in 2013. And this is after the Super Bowl year for you guys. And I just knew with you and NaVorro Bowman, it was always going to be a problem. You guys were going to be physical at the point of attack. You could run sideline to sideline. And I just have to ask you this question. Why did you retire at 30 years old?
Good question.
I wanted more P. Willis.
So 30 years old. So if he graduated, we'll say he was 22. Yeah, he probably played 8-9 years. And if he was 21 or 22 when he went to the draft, he was probably an 8-9 year vet, and he retired at the peak. I mean, he retired on top, no doubt. Him, Patrick Willis, Calvin Johnson, players like that who were at that peak and retire. I always think, I'm kind of surprised more people don't do it, to be honest, because when you reach that level and you achieve things, and whatever your goals are, and if your goals are to be an MVP or to go to the Super Bowl or be an All-Pro or whatever it is, but at some point, you do have to look around and say, would I rather just kind of be a human being? I have all these resources. I have millions of dollars, or I'm set. My family's set. You may have kids at the time. To be able to say, I can either play this game, I can further my legacy, I can do all this, or I can comfortably, for the rest of my life, at 30 years old, I can comfortably just sit back, be a human being, enjoy my friends, enjoy my family, raise my kids, watch my kids grow up, and everything's going to be cool. Get into different ventures, whether that's businesses or investing or whatever it is, for him. And now I think it's even more of a pull, because now you can still be in that limelight with content creation. We see so many athletes now go from immediately, even before they're done playing. I mean, look at Travis Kelce and Jason Kelce with New Heights. Look at Draymond Green's podcast. There are so many athletes that while they're playing, they start to build that media brand, and it seems like such a pull for them and such a passion for them. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised at all. Well, after the Super Bowl, I was kind of thinking, I wouldn't be surprised if Travis Kelce retired just because of this new door opening up for them with this podcast and this kind of media thing. Then you've already achieved so much. You've got all this money. You're young. You still have your health. You might as well get into this next chapter of, like with Travis Kelce, acting and a podcast and who knows, TV shows, movies, whatever he wants to do. But now more than ever, and I guess it kind of started with the Patrick Willis era, because you never saw that. Players just played until they were done. Players played until they were unable to play anymore, whether because of injury or whether because of just not being as good anymore. But with what we know now as far as like head injuries and just the physical toll it takes on your body, I see so many players in all sports, and even like wrestlers, retire. They can't walk. They can't get out of bed. They're having constant surgeries. They can't feel their fingers. They can't feel their hands. Things like that. It's like, that's a tough trade-off to just have your health, have your resources, be happy, get into a different venture, and then, ride off into the sunset. So
Willie on the football field, because I knew we weren't gonna be playing against you guys every single year. But I think the fans also wanted more of you. Why did you retire at what many of us feel was such a young age?
Man, that's a great question. And I've hit on it before, and I'll hit on it a little bit now from a high level perspective. It was one of those things where it was time. They say when you know. And I remember having conversations with myself. I've always been one of those people that I talk to myself. And one of the hardest things I've learned in life is to be able to be 100% real with yourself and honest with yourself. And I remember my rookie year. Having a question. I remember asking some of the old heads. I was like, how do you know when it's time to retire? And they looked at me like, why are you talking about retiring? I'm like, because, I always learn when you start something, there's going to be a finish, there'll be an exit. But I also don't want to be one of those guys that I saw, like the guys I idolized growing up playing the game, and saw what happened to them as they got, over that hump. And so I just wanted to try to be mindful of that, but also give it everything I had. And so, yeah, when that time came, it just felt like everything was connected. And I just remember thinking about Navarro and I, and where we were at that point in time, and what I felt like. And I was like, man, I always felt like he was the next in line, that he was the protege to me, knowing that, like, I always felt, and I also had this feeling too that, like, man, I didn't know how long I would play the game. I just said, man, I'm gonna give it everything I have, for whether it's injuries or whether it be time that my body said, you know what, Patrick, like, it's enough, that I would be able to walk away. But it wasn't just walking away. When I looked my right or to my left, looking at Navarro, I was like, it's his time now.
So I mean, I kind of let Patrick Willis go there. I was enjoying the answer, but I think what he's trying to say is, and I kind of understand it. He looked at it like this is the right time because the next chapter's here. Like my protege is here. It's Navarro Bowman's time. I'm gonna let him kind of take this over. So if it wasn't for him, if he felt, or if it wasn't for Navarro, maybe if Patrick Willis felt like he's leaving the 49ers in a bad position by retiring, or there was no one there to kind of fill the hole, maybe he wouldn't have retired. I wasn't even thinking that to be a possibility of why he would retire, but I guess he felt so comfortable and secure with Bowman being there and the idea that, okay, let's see what you can do now as the kind of captain of this defense. And, it's okay for me to leave. I'm leaving everything good. A lot of people do. You see that in business a lot where a CEO or whoever doesn't want to leave until they know everything's okay. Until they know the succession plan and they know everything is right. And they're not, leaving a huge hole. So maybe Patrick Willis felt the same way. And that's a very interesting kind of aspect of that. I would not have thought about the roster dynamic being a reason why he would have left.
And this in the words of Simba, Lion King being one of my favorite movies growing up. I remember Mufasa telling Simba,
first movie I ever saw in theaters. Boom, right there, Lion King. Fun fact.
One day, the sun is going to set on him and it's going to rise on Simba. And I just remember that feeling and going into that last season and just what it felt like. I mean, I didn't have my dog beside me. I didn't have, Navarro. And I was just like, man, it's just not right. And there's more to it, leading up to it and everything. But, yeah, it was time.
Yeah, so then I guess he's saying, like, with Bowman not being there, kind of that, I guess he felt like a hole. It felt like it wasn't the same. And I also wonder, too, like, with older players, and 30 years old is not that old of a player, but I also wonder, I always think the time that you might know, okay, something's up is when, like, training camp comes around or the workouts start getting where you don't want to do it or you're just not as ready to do it. You're not as, you don't want to, the passion's not there. I always assume that's like the first real time where you have to look inside yourself, where you have to look inside and say, do I really want to do this? Because the passion is still there. Because at that point, a lot of these guys have been doing it for 20 plus years, not in the NFL, but just like, practice and training camp. I mean, you think about NFL players, like that level of player, if they're 30, 32 years old, they've been in the NFL at that point for 8 to 10 years. They played like 4-ish years of college. They played probably 4, 5, 6 years of high school ball, practice every day, training camps, off-season workouts, all that. You're talking about being on, even like nutrition and diet and taking care of yourself and whatever it is for the better part of like 20-something years. That's a long time to be on the straight and narrow when it comes to that. So when you have those moments where it's like, man, I do not feel like going to OTAs. I do not feel like going to training camp. I do not feel like going to practice. I do not feel like, I'm sure you go through that every once in a while, but when it's really there, that's when I always think the players probably start to feel like, okay, I'm close. I'm close on the way out. I'm close to not having that fire, not having that same intensity, and then it's kind of time to kind of figure out if that's the case. But I guess each person is to their own. I think it'd be hard if I was a player. I think it'd be very difficult for me to. I don't think I'd be one of those people that played until they were like 40 years old, because I think just looking around and having the resources and having everything else in order, I think that would pull me. I think that would pull me away from the game. If I was at that level. I mean, if you're winning and you're chasing your legacy and you're chasing Super Bowls and you're chasing stats and all that's a different story. But if you're just playing and, after doing all that for that long, and if you have the money in the bank and your family and your kids are growing up and they want to do things, and, at some point, I think a sport or a game or whatever does take a back seat. But interesting conversation from Patrick Willis there. It's always, I haven't seen Patrick Willis in the news in a long time. I mean, obviously with the Hall of Fame is why he's doing this interview, but he is kind of a guy who, Calvin Johnson, same way, where they retired, they seem okay with it. They're kind of getting into the next part of their life, and seemed very happy. So interesting stuff there. Let me know in the comments below. Were you surprised by his answer? What do you think? Do you think you'd be a player that played until they were 40 years old, like LeBron or Tom Brady, or do you think you'd play 8-9 years like Calvin Johnson or Patrick Willis and then right off into the sunset and enjoy your youth, enjoy your health? Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for watching. I will see you in the next video.